Hello to all the comic fans, Marvel geeks, and all the nerds in between. Welcome to another episode of the new and improved Vigilante Vibes, where we talk all things Marvel, along with other fandoms, but without the toxicity that's taken up way too much space in each and every fandom. I'm your host, Megan Nicole, and today I have two very special guests. I've been a huge fan of their podcast for quite some time now, and I can't wait to discuss things like X-Men and everything else with these two. Please welcome Please welcome Justin and Alicia from the Ex-Wife podcast.
Woo!
Hello.
Hello.
Thank you so much for having us. We're so excited to be here.
And thank you for coming on. Like I said, I've been a huge fan of you guys. I love that the format of your podcast. I love that you're going through the X-Men comics together. I love it all.
Thank
We
you.
love it too.
Yeah, we do love it too. It was an interesting journey to get here because I didn't read comics before the podcast started, and now I am obsessed with them. So it's definitely a new me in a sense.
Just before recording, I think you read what, 9 comics?
Yes, I did.
Over, the last week and a half of comics.
Yep.
That's a lot. Like, it doesn't sound like a lot, but I read 6 last night and I had to tap out. It was it's a lot, man.
You definitely have to put yourself in the mindset of like, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to do this.
I'm going to like it too. I'm going to enjoy this. This is fun for me.
Yes.
You're like, you cannot judge. Just read it.
Yes.
So, do you guys want to tell our listeners a little bit about you guys?
Sure, yeah. So I'm Alicia, and outside of co-hosting a podcast with Justin, in the nerd space, I'm also a cosplayer. So I love to find characters that I mentally latch onto and become them. So I've always been super into like Halloween and costumes, and so getting into cosplay has been a way for me to have Halloween all the time, which is really exciting. And in that same vein, my day job, I work for a company called 1031 Productions, which stands for like 1031 as in October 31st. And so we do living art, character actors, event entertainment. So performances for people's private events. And within that company, I run our dance company, which is called Metamorphosis. So we get to create custom performances for people's events, and I get to like sit with people and talk about like, what is your dream, what is your vision for this event, how can we make a dance performance and plug that in. And so yeah, I get to spend my days dancing and my nights reading and talking about comics, and then going to conventions and walking around in nature and all that fun stuff. Justin?
I'm Justin. I'm the other half of the Ex-Wife podcast. Hey, what's up? I'll follow the format that you have set in the nerd space. I'm not a cosplayer, but I am a cosplayer. I'm like
Low key.
I'm a character actor, and I put on costumes in that. But I don't make costumes because I don't have the patience or the hands. But I love being a costume. I love mouthing off in character. I love the excitement that it brings when you interact with people. I have an obsessive number of action figures and comic books. So we're talking nerd space. That's usually where I am, down in the basement, hanging out with all of my toys. I swear I'm an adult. So what? A handful of years ago now, I pitched the idea to Alicia. Hey, we should do a podcast. She wanted to do a podcast with a friend of hers, and kept on. It was like stopping and starting, and it's like, I could just explain X-Men to you, and you ask questions and then react to it, and that's the show. That's it. And people enjoy it. People like it. They find themselves somewhere in between my having read comics since I was a child, and Alicia being more of a newer fan. And we've been called out in a number of ways that Alicia is no longer a new fan. She has now been reading stacks and stacks and stacks of comics, especially with all of the guest appearances that we do. And we do a bunch of like issue reviews and trials for characters, and just really getting a wide breadth of X-Men history over the last 4 or so years. In my daytime, I am a video producer and photographer, drone pilot, improviser, anything digital content and or just having fun. And what else?
I don't know.
Nature stuff.
Nature stuff. We like to be
co-sign
outside.
+1 on that. Um, yeah, I think it's good.
Bike rides, long walks. We like it.
You guys live the nerdiest lives ever, and I love it. Speaking
Yeah.
on Alicia, your cosplay, I saw yours as the Goblin Queen, and I died. It was
Mhm.
beautiful.
Thank you.
I loved it. Do you think reading these comics give you a better appreciation for your cosplay?
Yeah, for sure, for sure. I mean, I am a stickler for being really accurate as possible to the comics when I do a cosplay too. So I like to get in not only the mind of the character and like the headspace and how they act, but also like the tiniest details of their costume. I will look at art pages, I'll pull up images to have them referenced. I'll be like, what is it like in this issue? How does this artist draw it different from this? And then sometimes I take Justin's Marvel Legends and use them as like models to have out for me to use. For the Goblin Queen specifically, I was really wanting to make that one very true to the X-Men 97 version versus the comic version. So I kind of like play back and forth with that. And then I have Justin, once I get in a cosplay, he'll be like, give me a pose. Give me another pose.
You're too Laura does not smile that much.
Yeah.
You're too happy right now. Be angry.
I
Scowl.
I did a gender bend Kylo Ren for a photo shoot, and I was doing poses with my lightsaber, and Justin was like, "You're too Jedi right now. You're too Jedi. You need to be more Sith."
And then I will usually do the low effort counterpart. So to
Mhm.
her X-Men 97 Madeline, I did as easy as I could for casual X-Men 97 Scott Summers, which was really just sunglasses and a polo and a coffee mug. But people loved it. And they
Yeah.
were like, "You're Scott Summers from the cartoon."
It
And I said,
honestly,
yes.
sometimes I'm like, "What the heck?" Like, I'll put all this effort into a cosplay, and, like, Justin will be like, "Okay, I'll do the minimal effort version," and then people will get so excited over what he's wearing, and I'm like, "Excuse me." And so he has this one that he made that's like I made it's a Spidey Sense half mask. We took like a children's Spider-Man mask and I cut it in half and we made the Spidey Sense coming off of it. And he would get so many compliments. I started being like, I made that because I
It
had
was my
FOMO.
idea. It was my idea. I just didn't have the technical
Yes.
skills.
Yeah.
I'm the ideas man.
Yes. That's for sure. He's definitely the ideas man.
There definitely is something to a more simpler cosplay because every convention I go to, I see someone looking incredible, like as Hela or as
Yep.
Yeah.
Loki, something beautiful. And then you have the one guy that dresses as Peter B from in the Spider Verse movies, and he kills.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
like, it's just so simple.
Yep.
I guess because it's like, it's attainable. Because
Yes.
you see ones like a Goblin Queen, and you're like, I mean, maybe I'm like 50 pounds. I could do that. Like I feel like there's some that you do that there are a lot of pressure. And then there's others that's like, that guy's doing it, man. He's
I
just going
think
for it.
I think too, like in that same thing about it being accessible is that at the same time, it's simple, but it's also like the polo that Justin got was like the perfect shade of like a light yellow. And like he he puts the details in, even though it's not necessarily like complex, it's still the details are there. So when you see it, even though you're like, oh, that could to a person who doesn't know X-Men 97, that's just a guy in a polo. But to
Yeah.
people who have seen the show, they know exactly what it is because of the details. So I think that's what makes it so cool too, is like you don't have to be a crazy seamstress or like crafter to do a good cosplay. You can just like make sure that you're paying attention to the details and get items that work within that. And then you could still be successful.
I think it's about that specificity that makes it resonate with that character, right? So in the same weekend when we went to New York Comic Con this
Mhm.
past year, I was Sanji from One Piece, and the details that I picked out were like, okay, well, he's always smoking a cigarette when he's about to get ready for battle. I'm gonna get a fake cigarette. He is obsessed over the women on the crew, so I'm gonna get these like heart eye sunglasses. And then I had Alicia draw me the curly brow eyebrow. So like the layers of there's no way that you can look at me and not know who
Mhm.
I am if you
Yeah.
know that character.
So you mentioned you like to curse out people dressed as in your cosplay. Who have you cursed out as?
Who have- Yeah.
Yeah, well,
Well, it's kind of a mixture of things because, well, Rick from Rick and Morty,
Of course.
definitely.
Yes.
That's just kind of fun. There was one kid that came up to me and flipped me the double birds and said peace amongst worlds, and that was just amazing. It's probably he was like 7 years old,
Yeah.
but highlight of the con.
So
Um,
good.
and a lot of it came from doing some work at Alicia's company
Mm,
in various characters. I was a cowboy from what's that movie? Night at the
yep.
Museum, and just mouthing off as a cowboy or as a pirate, and just getting to be like the disgruntled version of this character. We did a class at Uncanny Experience, which is an immersive X-Men convention
Mhm.
that happens in Minneapolis, Minnesota. This year it
Yeah.
is in
July,
July.
yep.
Free plug. No. And last year we taught a class about mutant homelands, and we had Bastion, a cosplayer as
So
Bastion
good.
in the class. And so like he would say things that would trigger me as Scott Summers Cyclops, who would just shout back at him, "Hey, like you're out of line, but you're not wrong. But you need to calm down."
Or when we do the first time that I did Emma Frost, he did Jason Wingard, and walking around as Jason, he is very snippy.
Right. Snippy, creepy, just really embody the character,
Very
right?
Jason
It's
Wingard.
not me, it's just the character.
Well, that's really exciting. I didn't realize you guys were involved in the Uncanny Experience. I freaking love those guys, and I love
Yeah,
what they're doing. It's so great. So,
so fun.
yeah. Before you did this podcast, Alicia, were you a fan of the X-Men, or did you just kind of watch the movies?
So my knowledge of the X-Men was very like surface level movies. I had like seen a couple of episodes of the animated series like in passing as a kid, but I was never like it was more just the baseline knowledge of like who they were, you know?
Mhm.
And when I started reading the comics, I will never forget how mad I was to find out who Storm really was in the comics and see how she was portrayed in the movies and just be like, "Oh, they did Storm dirty." Like that's still a grudge I have that I'm like, we need that remedied.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that was great. That was
Yeah.
super. None
Yeah.
of us are bitter at all.
No,
Not
not
even
at
a
all.
little.
No.
Yeah, I'm just excited that now it seems to be Storm's time to shine, at least in
Yes.
the comics and in X-Men 97. So here for the resurgence of the true Aurora Monroe.
Yes.
Yeah, it does seem like they're kind of building her up right now because, her comics, we've all read them. I don't even have to ask. We've all read them.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Fantastic. Then, X-Men 97 is coming sometime this year, late or next year. Who knows at this
Yeah.
point? And she was just in What If. So it feels like
Mhm.
they're starting to like build up to something really big. So I'm really excited to see where that goes. Do you guys have a fan cast for Storm?
Okay, I don't have anyone specific, but I will say that just the other day, Cynthia Erivo, who plays Elphaba in the Wicked movie, she was
Mm-hmm.
interviewed and asked like, "Do you have any dream roles?" And she said she would love to play Storm, and I was like, "Oh, I would love to see that. You are such a regal woman. You could be Storm in my book." And I will say that I've seen a lot of negative reactions on the internet to her saying that, but just the fact that a musical theater performer who I think is amazing, also loves the X-Men and brought up Storm on her own, for me is a win.
Yeah.
But I think there are so many actresses that would do her justice. Do you have anyone specific, Justin?
No, I'm terrible with actor names. I do not have anyone in particular. I think regality is important. I think
Mhm.
presence is important, and I think a lot of that'll come down to the writing and
Mhm.
to just make sure that they are writing a character that is actually Storm and not just a female member of the team that's
Yeah.
just there to be. And I feel like that was a trope in the '60s for comics for sure. It was like, and Jean is the girl. And then
Yeah.
Claremont fixed that. And he really centered on building strong female characters, many of which are still an active part of the books now. And I think whoever does it is going to have a lot, whoever does any of these characters is going to have a lot of weight on their shoulders to really crystallize them into the next generation. And yeah, I don't know.
I'm bad with their actors' names too. Like I know two I really want to see, but I cannot tell you their name. I
Right,
don't know.
right.
But Cynthia, I saw her saying she wanted to, and I was like, I never thought of it. I have to hear her accent.
Mm.
because I haven't seen Wicked. So I have
Oh,
to hear that she can, like, really do an Aurora accent, like, I
yeah,
need that power.
yeah,
And
for
I'd
sure.
also really like if Allison Seeley Smith was involved with picking because
Yes.
Hmm.
she's Storm.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah, we
yeah.
watched the what is it, the making of X-Men '97, and
Yeah.
Allison's talking about her background in theater as a stage performer and just the gravitas that she brought to the way that she's talking about living as a queen, playing
Mhm.
as a queen. I was like, "Yeah, this is amazing. She's
Okay,
fantastic."
well, Cynthia Erivo is also a stage actress, okay? I'm just saying. Also,
Yeah, if she can audition, that's great.
I've seen Wicked 4 times,
Oh,
so
have you?
I have a bias. It's a problem.
I can only see movies, like, every so often. So when
Yeah.
a Marvel movie comes out, I'm like, I'm there, but every other movie, I'm like, "It should be streaming at some
Yeah.
Yeah,
point."
yeah, right, right.
Yeah. I mean, my first nerd love, like, outside of comics, growing up, I was a musical theater nerd. Like,
Okay.
that's my thing, you know? So, I I the fact that there was a movie musical, and anytime there's a movie musical, I'm like, "Yes, let's go." And then I saw it and I fell in love with it, and I just any person that is, like, a friend or a relative of mine that's like, "Oh, I haven't seen Wicked." I'm like, "Oh, would you like to go? Would you like me to take you?"
Yeah. I've seen it once, one time.
So did you like the movie, Justin?
It was good. Yeah, yeah. I
Okay.
get some shade because of the way that I answer that question often. It was good. I'm not really a musical guy.
It
I've
did get a
never been.
little it did get a little frosty in here for a split
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
second. I was like,
Right.
"Uh-oh." But you
Uh,
Uh-uh.
liked it.
it was a bit long for me, but it was really good. The music's really good. The performances are really great, and the cinematography is
Yeah.
gorgeous. And I think it was a story that I knew nothing about going in, and that had a lot of surprises to it. I saw it the one time, and I would see it on streaming to watch the bonus features.
Yes, which I will be getting eventually.
Sure.
I told you I have a problem.
That's I don't see it as a problem.
Right.
Some people do bad things, you know? You just
Mhm.
Right.
like people who sing on screen.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's okay.
It's a healthy addiction.
Yes.
Yeah, there could be worse addictions. We
So
got,
true.
so whatever. So back to the X-Men. Who are your favorite X-Men?
Well,
How many do we get?
yeah, do we
Uh,
have a limit?
let's
Because
do top 3.
all right, because
Top
that's
3.
usually the question is like if you ask a real X-Men fan who their favorite X-Men is, they'll build you a team. They're like, all right,
Yeah, yeah. That's always my issue, but I'm like, but then I get on the spot and I can't think of them all. Then later when I'm trying to sleep at night, I'm like, "Oh my god, I didn't say Nightcrawler. How am I gonna live?"
Yeah.
Yeah.
segue. My favorite X-Men is Nightcrawler at the top of the
Mine
list.
too.
Yeah, fantastic, good company.
Mhm.
I'm going to say Magneto because he has been an X-Man, and Storm would probably be number 2, 3. Magneto and Storm, if they're
Yeah.
a duo, especially there were some times in X-Men Red that I just could not put that book down because of that dynamic.
If I am only allowed 3, then I have to say my girls, which is Magic, Kate, Pride, and Emma Frost.
Damn, that's a good team. That's a good top 3. But
Yeah.
speaking of the teams, we know that we're gonna get X-Men in the MCU at some point. Some point. Do you have a team built for what you'd like to see?
I
That's why I
mean,
didn't ask you your top team because I had
yeah,
something
Mm,
ready, yeah.
yeah.
smart. I
In my heart, I don't need to see the '05 as the
Yeah,
start of the
no, me
roster.
either.
I'd like to start in some semblance of the giant size team. I think that has a lot of diversity. I think that has a lot of really name brand X-Men team members. And if it's similar to the way that X-Men the animated series started, where they had existed, they had been members of this team, I don't need you to go chronologically. I think
Mm,
they'll probably lean into something that resembles the X-Men animated series, X-Men '97 team, just because those are the name brands that you think of when you think
yeah.
of the X-Men. But
I definitely want Magic. And I know that it's unlikely that she'd be like in the first round because of she's not till like New Mutants era, but I love her and I also think that she's really popular in Marvel in general right now. Like she's Marvel Rivals, she was in Midnight Suns like in the gaming world and then, we could get her in a movie. That would be great. I agree as far as like I think Storm is
Has to be there.
has to be there. I'm
Wolf
okay without seeing, like, Wolverine on the team, but
Yeah.
I also don't feel like that's a reality.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
feel like he'll be doing it. What did Ryan Reynolds say? 90 till he's 90.
Yeah, yeah.
So, um,
I just don't want him to be the main character.
yeah, no, I
That was
definitely don't want
never
him to be the
never a
main
thing I
character.
ever needed.
Some, like, other out of pocket characters, or like what Justin was saying as far as, like, keeping it consistent with X-Men 97, like, I'd like to see Sunspot. I I like him as a character even though I used to not like him. He has grown on me. And I think that he's an interesting angle. He kind of, like, in similar, background as far as, like, being a wealthy kid, and he kinda gives you, like, the angel place if you're gonna go for the '05 and say, like, "Who are you filling in?" Um, yeah, I mean, Dream World, Danny Moonstar. I
It'd
would
be
love
great.
her. So I just have
Yeah.
a different New Mutants movie, I guess, is what I would like.
That's what it's leading to.
Yeah, right?
Just choosing the New Mutants, I don't know.
See, I do agree that Storm should be involved, but I don't think she should be involved with the X-Men. I think she needs to get her own movie.
Mm,
She needs to be given that treatment before X-Men, or she's just a member, which we
yeah,
don't like. Give her the Wolverine treatment,
or she
you
could be the
cowards.
Mhm,
yeah,
Hmm?
mhm.
she could be the teacher, she could be the mentor, like, put Storm
Yeah.
as, like, the Charles Xavier and
Oh
don't
my
have
god, yes. I'm so sick of Charles Xavier. He's
me
just
too.
everywhere.
Preach. Yeah. I, long time ago, I had this idea of, okay, if I were to start the X-Men in some kind of cinematic universe, I would have 2 shows, one on Cyclops, one on Storm. Cyclops' villain and story would be about him and his brother and the orphanage and Nathaniel Essex and build up Mr. Sinister. And then Storm would be in Egypt after in Cairo, after New York and loss of her parents, and build up the Shadow King.
Mm,
And that this they would
Mm.
not be resolved. They would then just be in the background. And then you'd now have your 2 leaders of your blue and gold team to just hit the 90s crew, which is pretty iconic for a lot of readers. Number one selling comic book, and then they could just go from there. Whatever happens in between, we can we can give flashbacks. I'd love to see the Brood.
mm,
If we're talking like bucket list story arcs, I love the Brood. Would really enjoy to see that, and it would give a lot of interesting space dynamics.
mm,
I like that a lot. I really like that you brought the blue and gold into it too. That would be great. What I would like to see someday, I know it won't happen, but I would like it. I want to see a Summers family movie
Mm,
with
mm.
all their dynamics, all their messed upness. That's what I want. Make it dark and gritty.
Yeah,
yeah, yeah. Especially with the Shi'ar, that's dark. Like,
Yeah,
it gets weird.
that's what I'm into. Give it
Yeah,
rated R. And I every time I talk to someone about X-Men, they're like, "Oh, screw Cyclops. I hate Cyclops." I'm like, "You better put some respect on my boy's name." Like like right. People just hate that guy and they're only going from the Fox movies. They're like, "Oh, he just whined." And it's like there's so much to him.
there's so much to him. It
Read
was
the
That's the
comics.
the Fox movies and X-Men the animated series at the start, he's the Boy Scout. He's
Yeah.
just the hard-nosed,
The Captain America.
yeah, the
yeah,
teacher's
mhm,
pet, and he's so much more. There were 2 goals at the start of the podcast. One was to ruin Charles Xavier and to
worked.
actually expose
This
him
is
for who he.
amazing.
Yep. And then the second one was to build up Cyclops to who he actually was and is in the comics, because he gets such a bad rep. I was talking with a friend of mine, especially because I've been cosplaying as Cyclops now a handful
Mhm.
of times. People talk to me about Cyclops, and a friend of mine was told as a kid is like, "What do you mean you like Cyclops? No, you have to like Wolverine. Everybody likes Wolverine. He's the cool guy. He's the bad guy. He's the cool, like leather jacket motorcycle dude." Like, no, but I like this guy. He's
Yeah.
compassionate and he's a leader and he's strategic.
I like Cyclops when he's anti Charles Xavier.
Yeah. That's when he's
Revolution.
at his best.
Yeah.
Like the recent Uncanny X-Men
Yes.
when he said, "No, we have to leave him in Graymalkin." And I was
Yeah,
like, "You go Cyclops. You go
yes.
Scott Summers.
Right.
That's my man right there."
I've never said Cyclops was right before that moment, like, and meant it.
Hi.
This I've found my people because I have been preaching Charles Xavier is a villain. He
Mhm.
has started so many problems
Mhm.
and he continues to. If you guys have read the new X-Men comics, you know he has continued to be a problem.
Yeah.
And everyone's just like, "No, Magneto's the bad guy." And also Wolverine was not originally an X-Men, so calm down everyone. We can
Yes.
take
Right.
a break. Just give
Yeah.
us a break.
I think that the thing about Charles is, like, I would love to see him as a villain that owns that he's a villain. I think
Yeah.
that's the thing that bothers me the most is that he does these things but he always is like, "But I'm not a bad guy." Whereas, like, you take a different telepath like Emma, who I love. But if Emma messes with your mind for her own gain, she admits that that's what she's doing.
Mm.
She's not like, "I'm helping you. I'm doing something nice." She's like, "No, I'm doing this because I'm a dirty, dirty biscuit and I don't care."
Yeah.
And that's what makes me like her. You know what I mean? Because she owns it. She's not like pretending she's something else.
Did you say a dirty biscuit?
Yep,
Yeah.
I did.
Stop it. That's beautiful. I
We
love
we do
that.
not we don't curse on our podcast, so we have
Mhm.
developed a handful of, like, what the flark, like,
Yeah.
there are things that we are go-tos
Yeah. Calling someone a dirty, dirty biscuit is
as
something
intense as it
more.
gets.
I feel that. We try not to curse in our house, so we have little workarounds, like, instead of calling my kids a dill hole, we'll say, "You dill," or "You dink," and
Yeah.
it's
Yep.
like, they just think it's a funny name, and we're like, "No, we're calling you an a-hole." Like,
Yeah, yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
kids are rough. But I love that. You don't see many podcasts that don't curse, but
That
it
was
makes sense.
that was the intent, right? So the idea is opening the gate and not gatekeeping from my wife as a new fan, and
Mhm.
we don't want to do that for any other new fan who's trying to understand, okay, what is this franchise, who are these characters. And I just feel like, in the same way that a lot of comedians who play clean have a lot more opportunities because
Mhm.
of that, because of the appeal, because of the way that they're able to play any room. And I just feel like it opens up to a variety of audiences. And we still have fun, we still laugh, we still joke,
Yeah.
and we
We
don't
still say
say,
things in code if we need to
yeah, yeah, yeah.
really say it. But it's
Yeah.
also good because it's like, okay, what if you have someone who's like an older member of a family who wants to help a younger person in a family get into comics or talk to them or share that experience with them, but they want to do that through our podcast, then at least we know that like our friends and their kids could listen to it, or like you could have it on in the car with your children and you won't be like, oops.
That's exactly it. I listen to you guys in my car with my kids, and I'm like, "Whew." Thinking it, because there's been a few times that I've played one, and I'm like, "Oh, it's just an X-Men podcast." No.
No.
No, 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 no. It got, like, really one got really, really into detail about Madeline Pryor and Scott Summers, and I was like, "Oh,
Yeah, yeah,
just
yeah.
listen to Radio Disney," and
Yeah.
take
Yes,
it off.
yes, yes. You definitely can get into a very sexual place when you're talking about the X-Men if you're not careful.
Sometimes it's just too easy, but that's a different thing. What I do like about your podcast is you mentioned earlier, it's relatable that people can find themselves somewhere in the middle of you two. I think it's super relatable because most nerds, not I wouldn't say most, like half nerds are married or with a partner that is not interested whatsoever, but they wish they were.
Mm.
Mhm.
I'm in that myself. My husband does not care. He has never read a comic book in his life. He shows up to movie theaters and he gets snacks. That is it.
Yeah.
But I like that you guys took something that you love and something that you were interested in kind of, but not fully involved
Mhm.
in, and now you guys created something really amazing.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think a handful of people, they have I have become this guy that he's like, Justin, how did you do it? Teach me. Like, how do I want to get my girlfriend, wife, boyfriend, husband, partner, or whatever into the comics. And it's really, if you like fictional narratives, there is a comic that I can appeal to you, and then once I have you. Like, I just watch what you're interested in,
Yeah.
and I continue to recommend things that will find you deeper and deeper into that franchise or into that world. Alicia, even though she had never read a comic, she loves fantasy storytelling. She loves long, sprawling narratives, epic
Mhm.
heroes. And I was like, you love X-Men, you
You
just
just don't
don't
know it
know it.
yet.
And so when we were starting out the podcast, I took it is the original tagline was one man's elaborate scheme to get his wife into X-Men comics. And I watched what she gravitated towards, and I doubled down on those characters, on those titles. It, she loved Marauders. It was like, okay, so let's learn about Kitty Pryde. Let's learn about Emma Frost. Let's have Mateo Lawley on the show. Let's
Yes.
have Jerry Duggan on the show, and like, just build that so that it becomes this thing that she cannot stop engaging with.
Yes, it worked. And it worked like really
Too well.
quickly. And I went in hard. Like I was like, yes, I shall be hyper fixated and consumed by this.
This is my life now.
Yes.
So you said you saw some of X-Men, the animated series, in passing. You clearly have watched X-Men 97. How did it feel to actually see these characters on screen, the ones that you've been learning about and cosplaying as?
Yeah, it was cool. It's cool to see them and to understand them better and to know, like, especially with X-Men 97, having Justin had taken time in the beginning of our podcast to review like the seminal moments of X-Men and like some of the key stories to like who the characters are and like just like history points. If you're taking an X-Men history class, like what do you need to know? And so there was a lot of like history that I knew that I could then see explored in X-Men 97, which I think just makes it more enjoyable when you know the source material and then you get to see how they spin it or what they pull from different stories to put together to make a new story. That's what I really enjoy about like a fandom that has multiple versions of media, like movies, TV, and comics, even like comics in different universes, because you know what you like about a character, you know what you like about a story, and then you get to see how it's expanded upon and changed, or like a different writer taking those characters and putting them in different situations and seeing how the character responds to those situations. And when you have a really strong base of who those characters are, you can understand them in those other situations a lot better than you could if you were just coming to it without knowing. Not saying that you couldn't like enjoy and understand what's happening in X-Men 97 if you didn't read the comics, but to see those moments like happen, and very specifically Madeline Pryor, the Goblin Queen arc, like I really loved her as a character when I met her in comics. And when we went through, the beginnings, the road to Inferno, and learning about like what happened with her and Scott and him like leaving her and going back to Jean and all of this, like I was really upset. And I also thought that like she deserved more than that. And so to see how they took that story and tweaked it for X-Men 97 and like gave her more of a moment and also just treated her a little bit more fairly in terms of like Scott's feelings on the situation. Like Scott treated her more fairly. I really appreciated that because I felt like that was like she got a moment now. She had like her whole Sailor Moon transformation moment and like
Yeah.
all of that just felt like really good to see that story with a fresh take on it.
Oh, that's amazing. So, my next question is for you, Justin. How does it feel now that your wife's into X-Men and can keep up and you guys can bond about this?
Yeah, it basically gives me a free pass to buy whatever X-Men things I want. I can just no, it's for the podcast. It's for I was telling a coworker about it the other day, about how, we read these comics every week. We sit down and record the podcast, and we'll sit there for about, 2 hours, hour and a half, sometimes longer, and just have a multiple hour conversation about these things, what brings us joy, what we question, what we didn't enjoy, what we
Mhm.
argue about, if we have different opinions. And it's just, we had one person a long time ago give us a review about, beyond just a conversation of X-Men, it's a husband and wife who are sharing their enjoyment of a piece of media,
Mhm.
and just dissecting it, talking about it, bonding over the way that this thing is. And I feel like there's some of the longest conversations that we have in the week. Like, when was the last time you sat down and had a 2-hour conversation with someone and weren't looking at your phone or weren't
Mhm.
thinking about something else, and to just be in that moment and think about this thing, and to be doing that for the last 4 years about this thing that I've been obsessed with since I was a child. It brings me joy. Sometimes it's overwhelming because of, all of the titles. There's so many X-Men titles now,
Yes.
all of the
Yeah.
comics, all of the we do a lot of cons and stuff, but it all comes together in a really beautiful way.
Mm-hmm.
The new friends that we meet, the experiences that we get, the
Yeah.
premieres that we've gotten to go to, like it's a beautiful thing. It's I love that just on a whim I said, why not I just explain comics to you? Because when we started the podcast with House of X and Powers of 10, and when that first came out, that was my first push back to going to the comic shop. I had stepped away from comics for a number of years, and I saw the press talking about how great and how big this was going to be. I said, "Okay, I'll check this out." I figured, it's however many issues, 12 issues. I'll get the first issue, and then I'll wait a couple weeks, and then I'll get a couple more issues. I was there every Wednesday. I could not stop. I read them multiple times, and I had no one to talk to. I've never really had many in real life friends who also were that engaged
Mm.
in comic stories. I would, Reddit groups, Facebook groups, that's one thing, but now to have someone and not to force it onto her, because when they
No.
first came out, I was like, "Hey, you should try reading this." And she read House of X #1. She's like, "Okay, that's interesting." She read Powers of 10 #1. She's like, "I don't want to do this anymore." I was like,
I was
"Okay,
like, I don't get it.
no,
What is
and
happening?
fair,
Fair.
because that was mind explosions.
Yes.
That that is one heck of a comic to jump into if you're
Yes.
new to the comics. So I'm kind of feeling a little overwhelmed for you.
Yeah,
So I get it.
But then
I
after we talked about the full 12 issues, then I went and I was like, "Oh, actually, now I wanna read this whole thing. Like, now I actually wanna read it."
so step 5 of the plan was to buy her a hard copy of the book that was now hers and she had ownership of, and then she could even just flip through, and then she read it slowly. Not even I didn't even suggest that you read it. It was just
Here it is in case you wanna look at the
yeah,
pictures.
yeah, elaborate scheme.
And now we have issues like circumstances where like Magic #1 just came out this week.
Yeah.
And we got, in our pull box, we always just get the A cover. So we got the A cover. We both read the issue. And I was like, oh, I'm going to go to this other comic shop and look for some variant covers because I know that the issue that we get, that our weekly issue goes in the comic filing in the basement in a special box, and like you can't take it out of that because that's where it goes. But Magic is my favorite mutant, so I needed it. I need to hang it up. And so I was like saying to Justin, I'm going to go to this comic shop. And then today he texted me and said, oh, I talked to Chris, who is the person at our regular comic shop. And he was like, I got the variant that we were talking about, and he set it aside for me, so you don't need to worry about finding me a second one when you go. And I was like, well, what if the shop that I go to doesn't have the variant that I want? Do I get the one that Chris has? And Justin was like, we'll see.
Yeah,
And so then I went to the shop and I got the cover, and it has like the foil detail on it. And I sent a picture to Justin and I was like, look, it's so pretty and it's shiny. And he responded and he was like, oh, thank God that one has the foil on it too, because the one that Chris has the foil. And I thought that if you didn't find that one, it was going to start a fight between us of like, who gets this one? So like now it's gotten to the point where like, I know where the regular comics belong, and either Justin will buy me like variant covers so that I can have my own versions of comics, or I'll go out and get another one, because if I want to have it like on display, I know I need another one. I know the rules.
Is Magic on display already?
Yeah,
she
Yeah.
is.
she's right next to us.
Yeah.
I review comics for nerdinitiative.com. So when Magic dropped, I got it in my email Monday afternoon. So I had to wait a day and a half for it to drop to talk about it to anyone, and I
Mhm.
was dying. I gave it a 10 out of 10. I absolutely loved it. What
Yeah,
would you guys have rated it?
10 out of 10, 11 out of 10.
yeah,
That's a good one. Mhm.
It's so good.
yeah.
Yeah, I love
It
it. And I'm so happy that it's getting a life, and she's getting to explore her own journey, and that it's so different than anything that I've ever read.
And it was just confirmed for a second printing as well.
yeah.
And
Yes,
that's so exciting.
it is.
It's been one day.
I've always said Magic is very criminally underrated.
Yeah,
She's just a total package with the
Mhm.
powers, the dark background. She's on the X-Men, for goodness sake,
Yeah.
now. It's like she's just finally getting the credit she deserves.
I think that for me, her as a character, like I love her, like, her wit and her jokes and, like, her kind of, like, tough exterior, but then you know that there's a soft side to her, and then also, you know, everybody has different life experiences, and I feel like there were certain things in my childhood, moments where I felt like I had to grow up faster than I wanted to, and so knowing, like, that she's a character who had to, like, grow up in limbo and become a little bit more of an adult before she was maybe ready to, that's something that I resonate with. And so finding a character that I feel like gives me strength in my moments of weakness is always something that I really enjoy. That's another thing also that I like about Kate. Um, is that resilience that she has and that compassion that she has. So that's why I like love the like when you find a character that you feel like you see yourself in ways, then you love them.
Hmm.
Hmm. How have you guys liked the From the Ashes line?
Roller coaster, highs and lows.
Well,
I think,
that's fair.
yeah, I think there was a little resistance internally. Really loved Krakoa, really loved the intentionality of world building and storytelling and the connectivity of different characters, even the conversation between the writers themselves,
Mhm.
plus the emotional connection to that being the start of the podcast. Uh, it's hard because there's pros and cons. You know, there's a lot of familiar ideas.
Mhm.
There's a lot of titles, which feels overwhelming. But there's also a lot of unique stuff and a lot of things that I'm really enjoying. So,
I would say the things that I like the most are the writers who are acknowledging what the characters like really acknowledging what the characters went through on Krakoa and then trying to take them on new journeys.
mhm,
And what I don't like is either the disregard for what happened on Krakoa as far as character growth for a character, not even necessarily like the actions of Krakoa itself, but like what a character went through, how they changed as a person. And then if that's not really like brought into the From the Ashes era and anything that feels like it's trying to push the characters backwards just for nostalgia, just for sales, like that's where I get more upset. Or like some of the stories I'm just like, what's happening here every time? And then other stories I'm like, I love all of this. So
yeah, depends on the week,
yeah.
It
but
really does.
generally positive.
Yeah, generally positive.
I'd say the same. There's ups and downs, but it's been mostly ups for
Yeah.
me personally. So my last question that has to do with X Men, at least. What do you think Magneto was right?
I have the T-shirt that says Magneto made some valid points.
Do you
I
really?
Yes.
don't I don't think that he was right. I think, there's a lot of murder in his game plan.
Yes.
And, I don't think Charles was right because he's just like, well, if we keep letting them kill us, maybe they'll like us one day.
Right.
I think there's some middle ground between them. And I really think Scott Summers is who hits that on the head.
Mm.
Hmm.
He is the son of Xavier in a lot of ways, but also has learned from the temperament of Magneto and has embraced Magneto in a number of different ways on teams of his. And you know, I think that the dichotomy between them, neither can be right. They're
Mhm.
meant to be polar opposites, different sides of the same coin because of that. I think Magneto telling you like it is, like they will continue to come from us. He has that lived experience from the Holocaust,
Mhm.
from being the other and not being allowed to be who he is. And I think that, the way that he responds makes sense for his history as a person. But I think that there are ways that, like, you need to alter the pitch a little
Yeah.
bit.
I will say that in just because we keep talking about it. So in X-Men 97, there's like the scene where Magneto is like talking to the world leaders basically about like,
Yeah.
you know, the difference of like different leaders in different countries and how you consider some to be terrorists and, where he stands for his mutant people. And I think that what Magneto has as a strength is that he always wants to put his people first, where like Charles always wants to put coexistence first. And like, I get the sense also like often that sometimes Charles is like, I don't want to make anybody upset. I just want everybody to be happy. Where Magneto is like, for my people to be happy, sometimes other people have to be unhappy, in a very like broad, not violent sort of explanation, because he does do a lot of murder, which is not always the best. But I think he's very honest with the situation. And another thing that I really value about Magneto is how much he puts forward um pride in who you are as a mutant. I think
Yeah.
he's very right in that aspect, and like encouraging mutants to like use their mutant name and to not hide themselves. Like if they're mutant presenting in some way, don't hide who you are, like don't alter your appearance to fit in, be proud of who you are. And I think that that's something that is a really strong point for him as a character, versus where Charles is like, we need to fit in so that we can coexist. And I think that's not always the best answer.
There's um there's a quote that I keep on going back to. It's from episode 3 of X-Men the Animated Series. It's the first time we meet Magneto, and he says to Scott and Aurora and Logan, "It is better to die on your feet than to live on your knees." And I just like, I don't know why that gets me hyped every time I think about it or I
Mhm.
see it. And the fact that it's a kid's show and I'm probably 7 when that's coming out, and I'm just like, yeah, Magneto, it is. You're right. I'm not doing my homework. Like it's just some of the ways he is the impassioned speaker. He is the
Mhm.
guy that will rally the crowds. And Charles is the thinker. He is the appeal to your morals and your ideals. And I think there's a way. That's why Krakoa was just such a beautiful thing, because there was this marriage of the two. There
Mhm.
was some concessions on either side to make something that could work for mutants as a people.
That was all very well said. With Magneto, I think he's just a walking power move. Like
Mhm.
Yeah,
every time this man talks, we're all like, preach.
yeah,
I would have
Yes.
said the same thing.
yeah.
Mhm.
I'm here.
So, my actual last question for you guys, where can our listeners find you since we're now wrapping up?
Sure.
Yeah. So if you want to follow the podcast, you can find us on the internet at the Ex Wife Podcast. It's THEXWIFE, as in X-Men, not former wife. Also, the xwifepodcast.com. We're on Instagram and Facebook, and we're still on X, kind of. Our profile exists there. I'll say that. We don't really partake,
Yeah.
but it's there.
It's things are weird with social media. Even
Yeah.
even Meta's getting a little fishy
Yeah.
Oh,
nowadays.
I know.
Yeah,
Now
Yeah.
I don't even
everyone's
know.
leaving. I'm on Twitter, but like not on it.
Yeah,
Unlike
Yeah.
you guys, I'm like pretty just dormant there.
Yeah.
yep,
And then I was getting comfortable with threads.
yep.
And now everyone's leaving threads. And I'm like, I can't keep up with you guys
Yeah.
because I don't keep up with what happens. I just kind of do my own thing.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
I don't know which one we're allowed to be on anymore.
Yeah,
No.
me either. But if you want to follow my cosplay, I
Yeah.
am on Instagram and I'm on TikTok, as long as TikTok is in existence, I guess. At
Yeah.
Wilder Moves. So you can follow me there too.
Okay, cool. And for those watching or listening to this episode, look in the show notes and you'll see all those links to where you can find these two amazing people. Thank you, Alicia and Justin, for joining me. This has been so much fun. You guys are amazing.
Thank
You're
you. It
amazing.
was
This was a
great chatting
blast.
with you, Megan. Thanks so much for having us.
Yeah.
No problem. Wherever you're listening to this episode, please check the show notes. Like I said, you can see the links. You can find Justin and you can find Alicia and you can see her cosplay and everything that's exciting and all their X-Men antics. it it was written down and way more funny than it came out. So
No, no, it was
It was
great.
perfect.
what can you do? Thank you for listening to this episode of the new and improved Vigilante Vibes. Wherever you're listening to this episode, click that subscribe button so you don't miss any of my amazing guests or any future episode. Thanks for listening. Hope you enjoyed and have a marvelous night.